This is Maximus Aviation.
So Boeing has taken a beating recently over its disastrous MAX program, and deservedly so. However, Boeing's other variants have been carrying millions of passengers every day without incident for years. So today I thought we should spend some time looking at some of the good innovations Boeing still brings to the table, and innovations that Boeing has created and pioneered that has made flying more efficient and, yes, even safer. And one innovation in particular. So get ready, because old Maximus here is about to give Boeing some much needed love.
That's next on Maximus.
How many times in history has the entire world been able to watch something catastrophic yet historic happen at the same time? Not many. However, this recently happened when we all witnessed the crash and burning of Japan Airlines Flight 516. It was historic because it was the first commercial aircraft made of carbon composite materials to suffer a total hull loss when it collided with a small Coast Guard plane in Japan. And none watched with more interest and trepidation than aviation manufacturers and airlines, specifically Airbus and Boeing. Fortunately, all 379 passengers on the Airbus evacuated safely. Sadly, however, 5 of the 6 on the Coast Guard plane weren't so lucky, with only the captain surviving with life-threatening injuries. It was in the early hours after the crash of JAL 516 that news and social media sites were gushing with the news that the entire A350 jumbo jet was evacuated within 90 seconds. However, that actually turned out to be completely wrong, because depending on the passengers you spoke to and where they were sitting, it actually took anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes to get everybody off the plane. Yet even though the Airbus A350 was eventually completely and utterly consumed by fire, the question remained, how and why did the plane survive the fire so long to allow all 379 people to escape unharmed? Well, much to the surprise of many in the aviation community, it was the carbon composite material of the A350 that made the difference. Because had the aircraft been made from aluminum, the consequences would have been tragically different. The FAA requires the largest commercial plane in service, a fully loaded A380, to be evacuated in under 90 seconds. However, those tests are conducted under ideal circumstances, not real-world conditions such as we all witnessed with JAL 516. So then how were all the passengers on Flight 516 able to escape unharmed after a nearly 20-minute evacuation period when in past incidents, within 3 or 4 minutes, aircraft were fully engulfed in flames and toxic smoke, resulting in a staggering amount of casualties? Well, for one, the Japanese passengers did as they were told and did not stop to grab their carry-on luggage as many have done in the past, only to lose their lives in the process. But the main reason all 379 passengers escaped with their lives is because of the A350's carbon composite fuselage. The JAL crash represents the first total hull loss for an A350, as well as the nearly 1,800 other carbon composite aircraft flying between Boeing and Airbus. And this crash proved invaluable due to the fact that this accident provided an opportunity for manufacturers and regulators to witness in real time the actions of the passengers and crew during the evacuation, as well as the airport rescue response, and especially how an all-consuming fire acts on a carbon composite aircraft. To be sure, the fire was all-consuming and devastating and took more than 6 hours for firefighters to fully extinguish. And when it was all over, the fuselage of the A350 completely and literally disappeared and vanished into black clouds of smoke. But the big takeaway from this fire was that unlike an aluminum hull that can burn through in a matter of minutes, the carbon composite technology bought the passengers much needed time to escape. According to his LinkedIn post, Emil Greenhalgh, a professor at Composite Material at Imperial College in London, he says that unlike aluminum alloys, polymer composites form a charred layer which can slow down the progress of the fire, giving the passengers more time to evacuate the aircraft. So although composites start to burn at a lower temperature than aluminum, they have important beneficial mechanisms that act as kind of a barrier when exposed to fire. Okay, so that brings us to the reason you probably clicked on this video to begin with. And that is, in my opinion at least, the role Boeing played in this story, and why I think they deserve credit, or at the very least, let's call it an assist, in this Airbus success story. Because since the Boeing 787 Dreamliner was the first ever carbon composite commercial aircraft, that would make the Dreamliner, oh let's call it Adam, and the A350 would be Eve in a biblical term, so to speak. So in that scenario, you'd have to say Boeing was the creator that gave birth to a new generation of commercial aircraft. But what's that I hear you yelling at your computer right now? Come on, Maximus, Airbus was going to make the A350 out of carbon composites anyway. Ah, but that's where you would be very, very wrong. And I'm going to tell you why. Back in the late 1990s, Boeing was working on a plane called the Sonic Cruiser. This plane will be capable of speeds of up to Mach 0.98, or about 751 miles per hour, which was about 100 miles per hour faster than other commercial jets. At first, there was interest from airlines, however, especially after the aviation downturn following September of 2001, airlines were opting for cost savings rather than just slightly more speed. So Boeing ditched the plans for the Sonic Cruiser and began working on the 787 project, which eventually went on to be called the 787 as Boeing announced its development in 2002. However, on this new project, Boeing decided to think outside of the box and try something that has only been done on military aircraft up until that time, and something that other commercial aircraft manufacturers were hesitant to incorporate into commercial aviation. And that was to take the carbon composite design of the Sonic Cruiser and build their new 787 out of a majority of composite materials, including the wings and, most controversially at the time, the fuselage. But Boeing was really going out on a limb with this new aircraft design, because it was the general consensus among aviation experts and enthusiasts the world over that there were too many unknown variables to consider when making a commercial airliner out of carbon composites. First and foremost, everyone feared the thought of fire specifically. And sure, there were bumps along the way for Boeing's Dreamliner, including the 2013 grounding due to the lithium battery fires, and recently fuselage fitting problems. However, the 787 still proved to be a very safe and efficient airplane. And there have been no 787 crashes since it started flying in 2011, with well over 1,100 aircraft delivered in the past 13 years. And the 787 remains one of the safest and favorite airplanes of airlines and pilots alike. In part due to some of its unique features, the 787 was the first to bring to market, such as its revolutionary air conditioning system, with its lower cabin altitude and higher moisture content. Also, pilots and airlines loved the Dreamliner's performance and fuel efficiency and its cruising altitude of up to 43,000 feet, just to name a few. And Boeing tested the new 787 extensively, as well as incorporating new materials and procedures that the commercial aviation world had never attempted, especially in that of fire protection. So Boeing took a tremendous risk in the revolutionary development of the 787, but a risk which has paid off for Boeing and airlines alike. So okay, Maximus, but what does it have to do with the Airbus A350? Their new A350 has all that Dreamliner stuff and more, and it has a carbon composite fuselage too. Well, that's true, but it's not because Airbus wanted it. Quite the contrary. As a matter of fact, in 2004, when Airbus first announced they were going to build the A350, Airbus was well aware of Boeing's new carbon composite plane, and Airbus wanted absolutely nothing to do with the composite fuselage. They were dead set against it. Instead, they were going to use the material for the wings only, because you see, the A350 was initially planned to be a 250 to 300 seat twin-engine wide-body aircraft, but it was going to be based on the A330's aluminum fuselage. Under their plan, the A350 would have had modified wings and new engines while sharing the A330's fuselage, cross-section, and wing box. The new Airbus fuselage was to consist of the existing A330's aluminum hull, rather than the carbon fiber reinforced polymer fuselage used on the 787. Yet the A350 was designed to be a direct competitor to the Boeing 787-9 and the 777-200ER. But to the surprise of Airbus, the original A350 design was publicly criticized by aviation industry experts, especially two of Airbus's largest customers, the International Lease Finance Corporation and GE Capital Aviation Services. Then on 28 March 2006, International Lease President Stephen F. Udvar-Hazy urged Airbus to pursue a clean sheet design or risk losing market share to Boeing's revolutionary Dreamliner, and he branded Airbus's strategy a Bandaid reaction to the 787, which was also a sentiment echoed by GE Leasing's president Harry Hubschman. Then in another blow to Airbus in April 2006, while reviewing bids for the Boeing 787 as well as their proposed A350, the CEO of Singapore Airlines, Chu Chun Seng, commented that having gone through all the trouble of designing a new wing, tail, and cockpit, Airbus should have gone whole hog and designed a new fuselage like the record-selling carbon composite Boeing 787. Consequently, as major airlines such as Qantas and Singapore Airlines were rushing to Boeing and choosing the 787 over the A350, then Airbus CEO Gustav Humbert was forced to suddenly have a change of heart or risk losing the major long-haul market share to Boeing. So he tasked an engineering team to produce a new alternative design. Then, in a stunning move on 14 July 2006 during the Farnborough International Air Show, the redesigned aircraft was designated the A350 XWB for extra wide body, and this version would now be built with, that's right, a carbon composite fuselage following Boeing's Dreamliner lead. And within 4 days, Singapore Airlines agreed to order 20 A350 XWBs, with options for another 20. However, Airbus did a very smart thing by improving on the groundbreaking Boeing design. Airbus's new A350 was to feature large carbon fiber panels for the main fuselage skin rather than a single barrel design. Still, in the end, following Boeing's lead led Airbus to improve on Boeing's design. And as we all saw recently, that decision ended up proving a boom for both Boeing and Airbus, and saving countless lives in the process. So as you can see, Airbus had no intention of building a composite aircraft like Boeing, and they had to be dragged kicking and screaming into the redesign of their new wide-body jet. But now in hindsight, love 'em or hate 'em, Boeing's revolutionary Dreamliner design, innovation, and especially their carbon composite design to resist quick-fire burn-through of the fuselage, led the way to a more efficient and most importantly, a safer aircraft. And as famed radio broadcaster Paul Harvey used to say, now you know the rest of the story. Oh, I'm sure eventually the industry would have gotten around to carbon composites eventually, but the fact remains the Airbus A350 would have just been an A330 with a lipstick, and not a brand new 21st century aircraft. And I imagine Airbus is happy that they not only followed Boeing's lead, but improved upon their original design, at least in my opinion anyway. What's yours? Let me know down below. And until next time, remember, yeah, this is Maximus.